Welcome to my 170th video on my work with OO gauge. This part will feature a very exciting and probably unique rolling stock arrival, a 3-rail Royal Scot locomotive, converted from a 2-rail Wren Royal Scot model. Unfortunately, that real star of the show will have to share this video with more stuff on camera issues, as I'm still in the throes of recovering from my good Sony still camera exploding last week. I decided to bite the bullet and fork out a considerable price for the current Sony model that most closely corresponds to the HS60V that I was using before. That would be the HX99, and I managed to find one on sale with Best Buy locally for $100 off the normal retail price as a fully warranted open box item. So I'll be showing the Royal Scot as I would always have done, including running video, but I'll be combining this stuff about cameras in as well as I try to learn to use my new HX99. Here's the new camera that I bought, a Sony CyberShot DSC HX99. This is essentially the current Sony camera that is equivalent to my old DSC HS60V, which of course is not made anymore. As you can see here, I bought this as a certified open box item from Best Buy, which saved me about $100 Canadian on the price, but it was still nearly $500. I took these pictures of it with my Panasonic Lumix TS30, which is a handy little point-and-shoot camera, but not in the same class as the Sony HX series as regards ease and flexibility of use and picture quality. And it cost more in the range of $200. I'm not going to get into reviewing cameras in detail. There are lots of good reviews of the HX99 on YouTube done thoroughly by professional photographers, and indeed I watched several of those before buying it. I will just comment on several aspects of the camera with respect to my particular priorities and experience so far in using it. And then the rest of the part, both still shots and videos, will be shot with the HX99, so you'll see my initial results with it. This is how the camera looks when turned on and with the flash raised. When the camera is turned off, the lens automatically retracts and is covered by a shield. The flash does not automatically pop up or retract. You have to pop it up by sliding a switch beside it, and to put it away, you just have to push it downwards and backwards by pressing on the top with a finger. I really don't feel very good about this. The sliding switch is considerably harder to operate than the button behind the flash that was used on the HS60V. And more seriously, the flash doesn't feel all that sturdy. It's rather sort of wobbly, and I'm not very comfortable trying to press it back into the retracted position. Will it stand up to me doing that hundreds of times? Of course, the fact that the flash was what blew up on my HS60V probably contributes to my nervousness about this. Notice that this new HS99 has a Zeiss lens. Here's the view from the back. The screen is nice, clear and sharp and adjustable for different conditions. The controls are very similar to the HS60V, so they seemed quite familiar to me, although the options on the HX99 are considerably more complex. To the left of the flash, as seen here, is a pop-up viewfinder which can be used instead of the screen. I don't really expect to be using that. And now there's a train going by outside. I turned the camera a bit here so that the screen can be seen a bit better. The screen seems to work well for me. I enabled the instant review feature so that pictures I've taken will pop up on the screen for a short time after they are taken. I set it to the minimum time, 2 seconds. That feature is not on by default. I find it useful to confirm that I really got what I was intending, properly lighted, in focus, etc. This is what the camera looks like when turned off, with everything retracted. It's very small, smaller than the HS60V, which wasn't large. Like this, it will fit into even a small pocket, but it's quite heavy. I'm not thrilled by how things are set up here. The red button is what you press to start and stop movie recording. The textured pad next to that is where you place your thumb to hold the camera. This was better done on the HS60V, which had a raised and dished surface there, which gave your thumb a better hold and kept it away from the movie button. The HS99 is much less comfortable to hold than the HS60V because of this poor thumb hold design, combined with the camera's small size and considerable weight. This is especially true when trying to take movies, as if you accidentally press the movie button you'll stop the recording of your movie, which means it's almost impossible to use the thumb hold when shooting a movie. There is a setting that disables the movie button in all modes except movie mode, so if you enable that setting you don't have to worry about accidentally pressing the movie button in other modes. Still, this is pretty poor design. The wheel above the movie button is how you change modes. I've got it with the green auto against the setting line here, so the camera is in auto mode, which works pretty well for most of my still pictures. This door on the bottom of the camera is how you access the battery and the memory card. The HS99 uses the NP-BX1 batteries, the same as the HS60V, so I'll be able to use the 3 of those that I already have. The HX99 does not come with a separate charger. You're expected to charge the battery in the camera by plugging it in via the USB connector. But I actually have an external charger for these batteries which I'll be able to use, meaning that I can just swap out the battery for another one when it gets low. The HX99 uses a micro SD card rather than a standard one. Every review I watched called this a poor decision, and I agree. There's no need to use a micro card in a fairly large camera like this. Micro cards are harder to handle, they're more expensive, and there's less choice available in them than in regular SD cards. I expected to be able to use a regular SD card that I had on hand with this camera, but I had to go out and buy a micro card specially. I do have other micro cards, but those are for use in micro cameras where there wouldn't be room for a full-size card. This is how you plug in the USB cable to the HX99. The cable comes with the camera. Well, you need it to charge, so you wouldn't be able to ever charge it without it, unless you had your own charger. You can use the USB cable to transfer files to your computer, as well as for charging the battery in the camera. To me, the way this USB cable plugs in seems like another piece of really dumb design. You have to open that little plastic door which is seen beside the plug in this picture. Then you plug in the USB-C connector, but the little door is flimsy and fiddly, and when you try to get hold of the plug to pull it out, you're naturally likely to get hold of the door as well. I can see that I'm very likely to yank that door right off. I suppose that won't be the end of the world, as I'll mostly be using the camera indoors, but why design it like this? I do tend to use the USB cable so far to get my picture and video files onto the computer because of the annoyance of trying to handle the micro SD card. With the HS60V, I just took out the regular SD card and stuck it into the card reader on my computer. So for me, this comes down to 2 bad design choices pushing me in a direction that risks damaging things. Anyway, enough of camera features, now back to model railways, though I'll be trying to use the HX99 for the pictures and videos in the rest of this part. Here's the 3-rail Royal Scot as it came, with its original Wren box. The Wren Royal Scot is one of only 2 models that were engineered and tooled specifically for Wren, the other being a bullied spam can. All the other rolling stock that Wren sold was based on Hornby toolings that were passed on to Wren when Triang, that is to say the Lines brothers, took over Hornby from Meccano. The 2 locos tooled specifically for Wren came out not long before Wren went out of business, so not a lot of them were made and sold, and they're rare items that go for high prices when they come up for sale. The Wren Royal Scots coming out late in the day were of course made for 2-rail operation. This particular model has been converted to 3-rail operation. I believe this was done by the eBay vendor from whom I bought it, and the conversion seems to have been very professionally done. Cosmetically, I wouldn't say that the Wren Royal Scot appears any better than the mainline Bachmann Royal Scots, which are the only other models of the unrebuilt Scots available. I have mainline and Bachmann Royal Scot models, as well as a version built from a Crownline kit on an Airfix chassis. I'm particularly keen on the Royal Scot class, as I know my grandfather drove them towards the end of his career with the Midland Railway and the LMS. The Wren model is definitely more substantial than the mainline Bachmann versions, being made mainly of metal, like most Wren locos. It also doesn't suffer from the problems of the split chassis mechanism that are often an issue with the mainline and Bachmann versions. The Wren model does have very complete and highly complex valve gear. It has some separately fitted parts, handrails and nice nameplates, but it certainly isn't highly detailed by modern standards. Here's the bottom of the model. The tender is entirely passive with no pickups or anything, but it is permanently attached to the loco with the drawbar being screwed at both ends. You can see here how the shoes for pickup from the third rail have been fitted to this model. These, of course, wouldn't normally be present on a Wren Royal Scot, which would just pick up from the driving wheels of the loco. When my model came, the parts that were removed during the three-rail conversion were included in the box, the original base plate and screw and one of the original brush connectors. The pickup shoes appear to have been very neatly fitted and should line up with the centre rail well. They're a bit worn though, so presumably they were used ones obtained from somewhere. This is the drawbar connecting loco and tender. Given that there's no electrical connection at all, I don't quite know why Wren went with a permanently screwed drawbar, as the hooking arrangement used on Hornby models really makes handling the models easier, since you don't have to take care keeping loco and tender together whenever the model is lifted, which you do, of course, here. Here's the end of the Wren box, showing Wren's original product info. It always slightly bothers me when I see OOHO locomotive. It can't really be both. Of course, so far as track gauge is concerned, they're the same, but something can't be in 1/76 scale and 1/87 scale at the same time. Certainly not something as precisely sized as a locomotive, even if you might get away with it for something like cows, which do vary a lot in size. I got the loco model onto my three-rail tabletop tracks for some initial running. I did another camera experiment here. The HX99 has a vividness setting which can be used to punch up colour in JPEGs. This picture was taken with the default setting. This is with vividness +1. This is with vividness +2. And vividness +3, the maximum. I think there's a certain amount to be said for the increased vividness. Unfortunately, it seems to be something that you have to do individually for each picture rather than something you can set the camera to do all the time, at least in auto mode. So to get this picture, I had to do 8 key presses, and having to do that for every picture rather discourages use of the feature. Anyway, now let's see some initial running video of the Royal Scot, which I shot to try out the HX99's video capabilities, though I expect that I'll mostly still be using my Sony Handycam CX700 for shooting video, since as a dedicated video camera it's more comfortable for the purpose. The HX99, however, can shoot 4K video, which I guess might be a big plus for some folks, though I don't really expect to use it, as I post in 1920 by 1080 to YouTube. Okay, I just wanted to try and take a movie of this converted Wren Royal Scot with the new camera, but I don't really know what I'm doing with the new camera, so it's all a bit on the tricky side. How the heck do you hold it while you're doing this? It's tricky to do. Let us zoom out a bit further, I think. Because I've got to reach down and try and operate the controller. Whoa! Okay, there, we got a bit of power there. I don't know what, he's a very clicky runner. I don't know what that means. I don't see anything obviously wrong with him. The other thing that really surprises me, that seems very odd about the way he's running, is he goes fastest there, but that's the furthest from the power feed. That's the power feed he just went over. He seems to slow down when he goes over the power feed, and speed up when he's furthest away from the power feed, which makes absolutely no sense, does it? I mean, you know, surely a loco should speed up when it's getting more power and slow down when it's getting less power. He's just generally speeding up a bit here, I think. Oh dear, I don't know. I'm trying to turn the power down a little bit. It's much harder when you don't have the handheld control. Yes, he definitely slows down there, which is weird because he's actually closer to the power feed. I don't know. You don't really know what I'm doing here, but we keep trying. See, if I want to do that, I probably need to be... I'm too zoomed in. I'm trying to get a view of him as he comes round, and yes, I need to be pretty much zoomed out all the way to do that. Oh well, I don't know how well this is going to work, frankly, because I don't know what I'm doing with this new camera apart from anything else, and I didn't really buy this new camera with... Now he's stopped. Well, I did turn the power down, but then I turned the power down, I think, just as he was going over the points, which was a bad idea, because then he didn't have good connection. Well, he's a nice-looking loco, and he's been converted to 3-rail, and he certainly runs on 3-rail, but I'm a bit concerned that he seems rather clicky, and his running seems a little on the eccentric side. But we'll see what we can do. Oh, so we have to press this button to turn the movie off. Okay, I was trying to run him with a couple of coaches. I had these, there's the Royal Scot locomotive, but then I had these coaches that I bought that actually have little name boards on them that say Royal Scot. I don't know whether you can see that properly, but they do. But you'd think, you'd think running coaches compared to running a loco would be relatively simple. But so far with my experience with 3-rail, it hasn't proved so. I've had a devil of a time getting the coaches to run, and these were no exceptions. There were various problems with them, and I'm not sure I've really got them running now. Bent buffers, bent couplings. Why would a bent coupling matter? Not coupling, of course bent couplings would matter, but why would the bent buffer matter? Well, because there was one of the buffers on this coach here, one of the buffers was bent so far down it was stopping the bogie turning enough to get round the corner. So and it's a metal buffer. These are old 3-rail coaches. Anyway, so I did my best to straighten things, and we'll see if we can get him round now, but I wouldn't guarantee it. It's quite possible that one of the coaches will derail or something, but we'll try. We'll try. I think I'm going to have the loco back into the servicing cradle and see if I can figure out why it's making such clicky noises when it runs, because I don't really like that very much. I mean, I don't think it's anything fatal, but I don't know whether something in the motion's catching or what it is. Okay, so I'm not going to run him too much now, but let's just have a quick look as he goes by, if he'll consent to do it without stopping. There we go. Okay. Well, if I can, I'm going to, let's get him over the point before we turn the power down. There we go. We'll stop him there. Oh, dearie me. Well, we did get him round a few times now with the coaches, and it took me quite a bit of mucking around to get them to that point. They really did not want to do it because of bent bits and whatever, but I did manage to get them round behind him a few times. The Royal Scot, a 3-rail Wren, a 2-rail Wren for Royal Scot originally, converted to 3-rail.
The model seemed to be running rather noisily, and in particular making persistent sort of clicking sounds, so I got it into the servicing cradle on the bench to see if I could see why. And, spoiler alert, I really couldn't. The motion of the valve gear is very complex, as you can sort of see here. Playing around with a new camera, trying to see how best to get clear pictures of this sort of thing. Is this better than the previous picture? Well, it depends what you're trying to look at, I think. The detail of the pickup shoes is clearer in this picture, which was taken in auto mode, which fired the flash.
but the conrods, valve gear, etc. can be seen better in this picture, which was taken in scene select macro mode, which didn't fire the flash. I ran the model slowly in the cradle like this, and I couldn't see anything in the motion that appeared to be catching. It all appeared to be moving smoothly, with nothing touching anything else where it wasn't supposed to. So I really don't know where the noise is coming from when the model runs. Whilst I had the model in the cradle, I cleaned and lubricated it, not that it seemed to desperately need it. After I cleaned the wheels with the wire brush, I cleaned them again with electrical contact cleaner on cotton buds. As you can see here, even though the wheels had already been scraped and then cleaned with a bronze brush, the contact cleaner still lifted quite a bit more dirt. I lightly lubricated all the pivot points and dabbed off any excess oil. And I got the model back onto the tabletop for some more running. Well, I've had this on the bench, but I don't know that I've achieved anything really. It still seems to make that annoying sort of clack, clunk, clunk as it goes round, and I can't tell why. On the bench it seems, when it's upside down on the bench it makes that noise less loudly, but it does still make it, and it seems like it's kind of perhaps the motion that's doing it, but I don't see anything actually hitting anything else on the motion, so I don't really know why. See what I mean? It's a sort of clackety-clack noise as it runs, and I really don't know what to do about it. I've oiled it. I can't see anything hitting anything else, so I don't know what the heck's going on with it. But it runs, and it doesn't seem to be particularly impeding it, well, famous last words, from running, I was going to say, but I don't know. Now it's stopped, though. Why has it stopped? It seems to have stopped rather definitely, which is not a good sign. Is it not derailed, is it? I don't know. I don't know. Oh dear, I don't know. Nope. Well, that's very bad. Well, that was scary. Took it to the bench. Seemed to run fine on the bench still. Switched points over here, so I was supplying power to the tank engine there. Tried that. So that ran fine, because I was afraid it might be the controller wasn't supplying power properly, or the power feed wasn't working properly. So other engine ran fine. Royal Scot ran fine on the bench. Turned out, put it back on the track, it ran fine. Tried to pull those coaches round and they wouldn't pull round. So basically the reason it stopped there was because one of the coach bogies had derailed, and that was just applying too much load. And probably the controller shut itself off with safety because there was too much load on the controller. Yeah, and it's a bit hard to tell with the Duet, because the Duet does have some sort of protection, but it doesn't actually pop up a switch or anything like that when it turns itself off, so it isn't easy to tell. But that was the problem, basically. So we'll try it again now. Of course, it may have the same problem again, because the coach may derail again, but what can I do? But that was what the problem was there. That a coach bogie had derailed, and then so that made the engine stop and things stalled up. Tricky business. I told you when I first ran these coaches that I'd been having trouble getting them to run. Had to muck around with them, bending things and straightening things and whatever to get them to run at all. I'm going to go back to using my regular handy cam for the video. I'm not going to use this for the video generally, but I just thought we'd give it a try. I've set the vividness up on this video as well, because I think it looks better with a little bit more colour. Okay. If we can get round one more time, I'm going to stop him. Famous last words. Okay. Let's not stop him on the point. The problem is if you go over the points too slowly, with pretty much any of these 3-rail trains, because they've all got the same third rail pickups. And they can get stuck going over the points if you go over a bit too slowly, and both of the third rail pickups end up on a dead spot. So there you go. More adventures with the Royal Scot, but he is still running, if a teeny bit noisily.